Hey, it's Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and it's another to back or not to back this week, and we have a lot of fun things this week, including a section full of drama, which really isn't fun. I'd much rather not be doing this, but there will be timestamps in case you want to skip all of that. Additionally, if my voice sounds a bit hoarse or if at any point I pause, it's because I have a bad cold, cough, and I may actually pause to breathe for a bit, and that might actually be a good thing. We'll see. And by the way, I have tested for COVID. Do not have COVID. I already got COVID. Does not mean I can't get COVID again. I actually thought I did get COVID again because I had some similar symptoms. I was like, oh, Delta variant, it's not nearly as bad. And then I didn't have COVID, so that was nice because the first time I had COVID, I really didn't like it. So much for slowing down to pause. Anyways, let's go ahead and jump on into it. So, starting off the bat, we're going to have, updates. We have 3 updates, just brief updates on 3 campaigns we talked about already. And then we go straight into, drama, and then we go into all the other Kickstarter campaigns. A lot of fun stuff to go over this week, and I will say prices are not the best in general. More and more, campaigns are giving price points that make me less and less confident that something is a good back. It doesn't mean I'm not backing things, but it does mean I'll be backing less things. It means I'll be more selective about just how worried I am about missing out on a game or not. But that can go in both directions. The general higher price points across the board, it's something we've talked about in the past, is that the everything going on in the world right now, the freight shortages, the slowdowns in manufacturing in China, the limited resources, all these different things, and limited resources might sound like a Euro game, but it's a game about making euros, I guess. But anyways, more and more we are seeing costs changing. And we're seeing increases in MSRP. We're seeing announcements from, I don't remember if I talked about this in a prior video, but like Asmodee shot out a giant price list saying, hey, all these MSRPs on hundreds of games are going up by like $3 to $5 a piece. And that will be true across the board. We're seeing higher MSRPs, we're seeing higher price points, and the tricky part about Kickstarter is Kickstarter is generally giving you the price point a year in advance, which means for that year, things still seem a little bit out of alignment. For that year, price points on Kickstarter being raised by $5 to $10 per game makes it look out of whack with retail, but that's because you're paying for something now and you're getting it a year later, versus that's going to come and catch up later. The net result is I'm still going to talk about games, I'm still going to talk about value, I'm still going to do all that, but more and more we will have weeks like this where I am less confident on whether something is a good back. And I'm also less confident on whether it's a bad back as well because of that unknown. So, with all that out of the way, and it's something we're going to talk about again by the very nature of this, it's going to keep coming up. But anyways, Wild Serengeti. Wild Serengeti has a few days left to go. We're basically in the final stretch of this game. This is a game that is so ridiculously tempting to me. The puzzle of the game, I love games like this. I love this genre of trying to figure out how to min-max your points amongst variable scoring objectives, how to situate the board, move things around, abstract, adjacent, whatever it is. Overall, Wild Serengeti is a game that I really like the look of this one, and if you look over here, you'll see the 17 stretch goals unlocked for every backer. This can be from the same company. It's going to be from Bad Comet Games, who brought you Shaolia, the Warring States game, and overall their games have had limited production, limited retail availability. So if you do want everything here, your options are basically primarily secondhand market, or getting it on the Kickstarter, or hoping you get it at retail, or see whatever shows up there. If it's they may well have a reduced version of it as well. That's something they did in the original Shaolia. They had a deluxe version, non-deluxe version. So overall, the price point on this one is high. At $52 for this game, it's not on the low end price-wise. It's more than you might pay for an equivalent game, although there's lots of wooden meeples, but then there's other games that have lots of wooden meeples that do have a retail price point, $52 plus shipping. Again, this is a good example of a game where it seems about $10 to $15 higher than I think it should be or equivalent would be, but that goes back to that aspect. So may well hold its value. Some of the deluxe versions of Shaolia did, but again, puts it in that not confident zone for me. Moving on, we have Mythic Mischief. Mythic Mischief, I'm not going to do a lot of updates over here. They haven't really done any major updates to the campaign. I did put out a video this past week if you want to check that out. Me talking to the IV Games team about 10 things they wish they would have known. Basically taking their 3 Kickstarters into account. The fact that they've done Moonrakers, then Veiled Fate, and now Mythic Mischief. And as a fairly new company to the space, what are the things they've learned in those 3 Kickstarters? What are the things they wish they would have known back then? I thought it was a fun little conversational thing about the stuff you learn along the ways, about the nature of, and it's for sure worth watching if you're someone who's looking into doing your own game. But basically, shockingly enough, making a game is a job. It's not just, hey, I like this thing and want to bring it to life. It's, hey, I like this thing, I want to bring it to life, and I have to deal with all the other things, including fun things like tax law and shipping and VAT and all these other fun little things that nobody actually wants to deal with, but if you want to bring fun into the world, you might have to go through a little bit of work on the way in. But fun little interview, in my opinion, but you can check that out. I'll also have another video, by the way, going up possibly this week, possibly next week, before the campaign's done, another conversation with them about what makes an abstract, because Mythic Mischief, if you don't already know, is abstract adjacent. It's a game that has a lot of the common denominators that make an abstract while being very different in other ways, and so we go into that conversation. I won't go into it over here. Overall, short version of Mythic Mischief is, I really like this game. This is a game I am continuously pulling out. I just played it again 2 times yesterday because I really enjoy the puzzle of this game. At this point, I just want to have the final copy of the game because, sadly, I keep breaking the miniatures more and more. It's a prototype. The miniatures are delicate. I am not as delicate or safe with them as I should be, especially now that I already did my review of it. But overall, Mythic Mischief is a delightful little game. Lots going on. As far as price point, we talked about this last week. I'm not going to heavily go into it now. Short version is price point is high, but this is actually less compared to the general state of the world, and more that Ivy Games in general has taken the stance of releasing premium products at a premium price point, and their games have so far generally held their value, if only because of the fact that their games don't see wide retail availability. Their games are generally available on their website without the free shipping or anything like that. And so when they're basically giving you, hey, if you back this game, you're getting, you're paying for shipping, you're paying for the game, but you're getting the Ghost expansion for free, that does mean that it does typically work out between the combination of being out of stock, being in between print runs, and the fact that it's not widely available. It's a game that I believe will hold its value fine. I don't think you're going to be making a ton of money in it, although in between print runs, you may well. This is a good game. I'm not going to try to pull my punches on this one. I'm not going to try to hedge it or this or that. I like this. This is a good game. Every single person I know who has played this game has liked this game. I keep emphasizing that point, and I keep doing so because I keep playing it with new people. I keep introducing it to more and more people in my circles, and every single person I know has liked this game. It is one where the theme might be putting you off, and I understand that. It did for me as well. When I first found out that Ivy Games was making this game, I said, hey, you're making an abstract game, and you're making a game with cartoony monsters. I don't see that doing as well as your prior games. I think those things are turnoffs, and I say that as the abstract's not a turnoff for me. I love abstracts, but the cartoony monsters is a turnoff for me. And yet, it's no longer a turn-off for me having played the game. It's a game that, once I dove into it, I'm now totally on board with it. But yeah, if that's the thing putting you off, I completely get it. I recommend looking past it. I think you'll ignore it as you start playing it, and I think it's a game worth ignoring it. I highly recommend. Watch Tom Vassell, the Dice Tower, watch Tom Vassell's opinion when he did crowdfunding roundup and the way he talked about this game, and then a day or two later, he played the game, and watch the difference in his interactions there. I can't speak for his opinion of the game, but I can say that it sure looks like he's a little bit more cautionary dismissive, and then plays it and seems pulled in. That has been most people's reaction to this game, in my opinion. That is much longer than I planned on spending on Mythic Mischief. Either way, moving on to Tanares RPG. Not a lot here. We'll cover more as we close in on those 18 days. The short version is they're still pulling in more and more stretch goals. They're currently at 1.47 million, basically just shy of 1.5. I still think they'll cross 2 million, but it'll be hard to see. We'll find out. But overall, if you continue looking through these stretch goals, if I can scroll past over here, Phenomenal Dragon, just tons and tons of miniatures and stuff being unlocked for your game. Sorry, where are these stretch goals? They're down here somewhere. Yeah, you can see we're slowly, continuously ramping up, adding more and more things. This is the main thing. If you've been following the campaign at all, checking what new stretch goals, what new updates, what new, cards or stories or campaigns, miniatures, all those things that are being added to the game, that will tell you all the additional content you're getting your hands on. And so that is going to be our last of the 3 things, which means it's sip of water time. I'll be right with you. Tournament fishing. Tournament fishing. This is the drama part. Timestamps down below in case you want to skip to the next section, because there is some drama here. Now, I debated not covering this at all. The problem is, meaning I had 3 options on the table. I can talk about tournament fishing like a regular game and can pretend nothing's going on. Definitely not doing that. I cannot cover tournament fishing at all, which is a possibility. But I feel to not talk about this is in its own way doing a disservice. The tricky part is, sometimes when you have these drama things in the board game world, there are a lot of people who are simply unaware and don't know or care, and I don't love bringing drama into anyone's life, but the flip side is if I don't talk about it at all, then you get some people who are like, oh, Alex is ignoring the thing, Alex doesn't want to talk about this, that, and you're right, I don't want to talk about it. And I will still avoid dramas as much as possible. I would say more so than not, I would try to avoid drama where I don't think it's as clear cut. When I think that there is more of a clear and obvious right and wrong, I do feel a sense of obligation to talk about it, because it shouldn't be ignored, even as many of us don't necessarily want to deal with the drama. It's a tough thing. So again, my recommendation is, if you don't know or care what's going on and you don't want to know more, by all means skip to the next timestamp. As far as the short update of what's going on, and by all means, if anyone thinks I got anything wrong, please correct me. I believe I have everything as down pat as I possibly can. But if anyone thinks I'm missing any factual pieces of information, not opinions, if anyone thinks I'm missing factual pieces of information, then by all means, correct me as much as you want. So, tournament fishing. I'm not even going to talk about the game. I don't care about the game at this point. To give you some general context to the game, tournament fishing is a game that was a print and play and is being brought to production by TGG, the Gaming Goat Games, who is a giant retailer, but also is going to be recently more and more started getting into the production side of things. Now, tournament fishing had a picture on this page with a frog, an illustrated frog, and a little OK symbol on their hands. An OK symbol with the frog, which to 90% of people, I don't know percentage, to some percentage of people is going to be completely meaningless. To another percentage of people, it's going to mean something and be dismissed, and to another percentage of people, it's going to mean something and not be dismissed. See, the OK symbol, if you're not familiar with it right now, has been co-opted by, at some point it was co-opted along with Peep the Frog, as a white power symbol. So having a frog throwing a white power symbol could be meaningless and harmless and could be nothing, but is potentially a flag. What makes it more potentially confusing is Jeff Bergen, the owner of the Gaming Goat Games, tends to have a very abrasive online personality where he wades into conflict, wades into any forms of issues, debates, or whatnot, and has strong opinions that are not necessarily always to the right, by the way. He has strong opinions, I would say. Strong opinions both to the right, to the left. He has strong opinions, and he wades into conflict and is not averse to any form of conflict. And then, recently, he and Suzanne from the Dice Tower had a back and forth thing on Twitter, or Facebook on Twitter, where it got messy very quickly, including, and problematically, jokes made by Jeff Bergen, again the owner of Gaming Goat Games, that could easily be interpreted as a rape joke. Okay, so it could easily be interpreted. I'm using my words very carefully here. He made a joke that could easily be interpreted as a rape joke about Suzanne. That's pre this drama. Suzanne posts on Twitter that, hey, look, we have a white power symbol on the Peep the Frog meme situation going on in this game. Which, again, there is always the possibility that it's completely harmless. I'm not going to disavow that as a possibility. But it also could be more. And this is where context of the people involved, and the background involved, and the general not being averse to stirring the pot that TGG Games has, are factors in this conversation. Again, trying to be as factual as possible, and trying to use words like could be interpreted as, could be seen. I'm trying to be as factual as possible here. All that is one thing. The next step is, in my opinion, where things get more problematic, in my opinion. Which is where, as a result of this Twitter post, Jeff Bergen, the Gaming Goat Games, who doesn't mind wading into drama, who doesn't mind stirring the pot, embraces the attack and throws onto the frog a little tag, and maybe it's not him, maybe it's someone at his company, again, trying to be factual. Someone threw onto the frog the caption, "This frog is A-OK. This frog doesn't have a hateful bone in its body." Effectively not saying, oh, giant misunderstanding, not taking it down, not doing anything like that, not even just ignoring it, but embracing the attack, embracing the accusation, embracing the interpretation. Entirely perhaps without the full understanding or ramifications of how potentially damaging that could be, of how potentially hurtful or more than that it could be, potentially, but wades into the full embrace of what is effectively the accusation that they are using, an alt-right symbol, and then goes into the embracing of that. The analogy I gave someone else is, I can't speak for intents. I can't and I won't speak for intents here. But what I will say is that, using an example from when I was in high school, I had friends who thought it was funny to move traffic cones to the middle of the road in the middle of the night. They thought it was funny because it was good for laughs. And sometimes when we do things that are funny, people can get hurt. It does not make you not... You're responsible for your actions, even if you're doing it for shits and giggles. Apologies for the language. I try not to swear on the channel. I generally avoid it, but I think it's an apt analogy. Even if you're doing things just for laughs, sometimes there are people who get hurt. And this is where the thing starts spiraling and continuously doubles down. And what we have here is a picture, or the factual piece of information I have are a company and a person behind the company who doesn't mind embracing drama, who doesn't mind embracing controversy, who has butted heads with multiple people in this industry time and time again, who I personally do not think was in any way trying to be I don't even know what to call it, to be alt-right. I don't think they are alt-right in their stances or whatnot, but who did have a questionable imagery that was called out as being an alt-right imagery, and embraced that, perhaps for laughs, perhaps for not, and kept on doubling down on that. Eventually removing it, and eventually kind of taking a step back, but not before throwing the frog as his personal profile picture. Which, to me, the entire drama in the situation is a problematic thing that could be interpreted one way or the other, that was doubled down on and kept on spiraling and spiraling. Which is why people have been stepping away from the campaign in droves. There are people who are more incensed at the initial fact that this happened at all. There are certainly people who are in that category. For myself, I'm not. I'm in the category of a lot of others who stepped away and are distancing themselves, not based on the initial thing, which could be debated, could be not, there'll be different opinions for sure. But the subsequent doubling down on, regardless of the intent of alt-right, not alt-right, which I personally don't think is still inappropriate and problematic in my opinion. Again, I hope this captured the information. I hope this captured everything correctly and accurately. I tried to remain as factual as possible and distinguishing opinion from those things. I hope I did it correctly. The net result is, like I said, the video went from having like 10 different campaign videos down to like 2 or 3. Many people have backed away from the campaign. Many people have backed away from the gaming goat in terms of future doing business with. Bruno Feduti, who is going to be doing SOS Titanic with reprint of SOS Titanic with TTG Games, announced that they're looking into options. They don't know if they will or won't. We have people, their partners in Regicide said they're not going to be renewing their license. We have their partners in Black Sonata, I believe, said they're not renewing their license. We have multiple stores who have announced that they either are or were already closing their franchises with the Gaming Goat. So there are a lot of people backing away, and in my opinion, understandably so. I do not believe, this is where I'm not going to go down a heavy tangent here, but there will always be calls for cancel culture at times like these. And myself, I have inappropriately and incorrectly used the term cancel culture for things that weren't cancel culture. What I think the general masses mean when people say, oh, cancel culture, what I think people generally mean when they call that, myself included when I have used it in the past, is the idea that we think that the consequence is out of proportion to the action. It's not cancel culture. Cancel culture, people are just choosing to do what they want to do. People are reacting to the decisions people have made. When myself or others think that the consequence is out of proportion to what happened, that's when that term is thrown around, in my opinion. In this case, speaking for myself and my own opinion, I think that sometimes people are backed into a corner. And I think when you're backed into a corner and you're being forced, so to speak, or feel like you're being forced to apologize for something you might not think is a big deal, I am completely sympathetic to what that feels like and the fact that you might not make the right decision, but it still has consequences. I don't like apologizing for things that I don't think I feel are wrong. I don't know what I would do if or when presented with that dichotomy. Generally, if I do something and I'm called out for it, either I'm introspective and I try to apologize, or I'm introspective and I don't think I'm wrong and then I have a hard decision to make. I am sympathetic to potentially being in that position, but doubling down on what is a white power symbol is never the right move, in my opinion. Which is there. As an aside, well, yeah, that is basically the full Gaming Goat tournament fishing current drama situation. And speaking for myself, by the way, I have a few other games that I already have agreed to cover that they have sent me. I have Black Sonata, I have SOS Titanic, I have a few other games that I will still be covering. I will not be covering tournament fishing, in neither this campaign or whatever. I will still probably be covering their other games as long as things don't escalate past that. I am hesitant to accept more games and I'll have to make decisions accordingly. I don't think I will, frankly. I'd rather not. But with a prior commitment, it is a balance as to whether it should or shouldn't, or just send them on to somebody else. we'll see. If anyone has strong opinions that I shouldn't, I'm happy to take those into account. I do not want to make, I'm not interested in covering them for personal profit in the slightest, but either way, that is the overall situation on tournament fishing and all of that. And moving on to the next section, and if you've jumped here from all that, I don't even know how long that was. That feels like 10 minutes of drama. That's more than I wanted. Anyways, moving on to the spill. Sorry. I need a breather. Not because of an actual breather, but just it feels off. It feels out of place for one of these videos, and I just need to pivot. What can I tell you that's interesting? The spill. Let's go ahead and dive into it. So, the spill. Moving on into the spill. We have the spill is going to be by Smirk and Dagger Games, or Smirk and Laughter Games. The same company. I'm not sure which brand this one's under, specifically because they have both in this image. So, from one of those companies, for sure. The spill is going to be a tower defense style cooperative game. Tower defense in the sense that you are being attacked by oil and you have to fight back against the oil. They call it reverse tower defense, which I think is just the idea that they have the tower of oil in the middle shooting out. But effectively, for those who play tower defense games, this is going to be a tower defense game, and you just have tons of different lanes you're fighting in, so to speak. But effectively, you have oil pouring out of this tower, you have oil spreading across the ocean, and then you have to take your actions to try to mitigate the damage the oil does while you're trying to accomplish your objectives throughout the round. Solid art, a different theme than what we're used to seeing, hopefully a solid implementation. Smirk and Dagger Games, Smirk and Laughter Games generally puts out solid games. Overall, very intrigued by this one. The price points we have are going to be $45 for the base game plus stretch goals, and then we have $60 for the deluxe version of the game, which has upgraded tokens or meeples. Let's go ahead and show you that. We have upgraded over here. You see over here, the Marine Life tile upgrade, giving you all these upgraded tokens in the deluxe version of the game, and then, of course, all stretch goals for the game. This is one that currently the price point of it, what's the real world concerns? No, that's going to be overall. It's giving you, like, it's abstracting the oil crisis or whatever it is. It's not using any particular incident as a reference, possibly because of, you could arguably get sued. I don't really know. Either way, that's going to be the overall game as far as price point and stretch goals and all of that. So again, going back to my previous point, you're going to see slightly higher prices across the board. And once again, even at $45 plus shipping, that this feels like a game that should be like $35 on your online game store, and you're paying $45 plus shipping. Now you are getting stretch goals as well, but I'd say the bigger thing is going to be, the strongest comparison I would give for this game is going to be their prior game, the Night Cage. Now if you look at the Night Cage has a variety of sales in terms of the aftermarket, how well it held its value, but some did and some did not. That's the short version. Some people are still selling the Night Cage at what they paid or more, and some are taking a $5-10 hit on it, especially once you factor in shipping. So I would say this game, the spill, falls into roughly the same category. If you are not in a rush for the game, if you don't need the game at all, then go ahead and wait for shipping. You might lose out on those upgraded tokens, but it's not necessarily the end of the world. If you really want this game, go ahead and back it. I would guess that you're going to lose somewhere in the range of the $10 range if you're selling it on the secondhand market yourself. So it's something you will lose a little bit on, but I would say if you're interested enough, this is the best opportunity to get it, because your options are waiting on the secondhand market and hoping it shows up there. That is overall going to be the spill from Smirk and Something Games. Dungeons of Infinity, Kingdom Cost. This is the reprint of Dungeons of Infinity, as well as an expansion brought to you by Sky Kingdom Games. This was originally brought to you by the designer of the game himself, Jack Spencer, Jack Sponser. I can't remember his name. It's on the box here. Jack something, Sponer, Jack, the original designer of the game, brought this one to Kickstarter himself. He has an appearance of Man of His Meeple a while ago. You can check that out. He's basically a mathematician who designed this game all around math and numbers and bringing you a dungeon crawl of a game, Infinite Dungeon Crawl, which is it's called Dungeon of Infinity. It is one that has both it has cooperative, solo, semi-co-op, not really, I guess it's semi-co-op, competitive, whatever it is. Either way, bunch of different play modes as you go through this. It also has single shot as well as campaign mode. There's going to be two drastically different experiences. I myself have played this game one time, an entire total of one time, which is why I don't have a review of the game. I played it, the single shot version of the game. I've not been able to dive into it further, but overall, basically it's going to have a variety of different things. It's going to have a dungeon that builds out as you, go through it. There's a term for that I'm blanking on, but a something dungeon. There's a term for when things evolve naturally as you go. Procedurally generated. It's a procedurally generated dungeon. It might be procedurally generated. I don't know. That term might be used for computer stuff. It's a generated dungeon. Either way, you're going to be going ahead and adding tiles to the dungeon as you walk around through it and developing the different aspects of what you're encountering, whether you're encountering chests or bodies or rubble or enemies, and all those things can have enemies in them because yeah, it's that kind of game. Along the way, you're going to be upgrading your character, trying to get as many points as possible to go through the multiple upgrade points. Their single-shot missions are going to have a variety of different lengths, and different lengths will change how you upgrade characters. The intro scenario, which we played, doesn't have any real character upgrading because you don't play for long enough to get that character upgrading, to get those points needed to upgrade. And the longer the game you play, the more upgrading you could do, but really the campaign is where you're going to see the most character progression, the most character upgrading. The reprint by Sky Kingdom Games is going to be bringing you the game, with still standees for the base game, although you could buy miniatures, and then giving you all these extra game trays and stretch goals and extra stuff. And for those wondering, hey, the original base game was $50, and now we're seeing it over here for $69, it's $20 more. Sky Kingdom took on this game and basically made it more expensive. You're right, but they also gave you a chunk full of extras, including game trays. And if you haven't paid attention to the game trays, let's see if we can go ahead and look what's in the game over here. All these game trays, the box themselves, and then all the player trays, are going to be additional options you're getting for that same $50 while you're paying $70. You're paying $70 to get a $50 game, but you're getting extras, stretch goals, unlocks. You're getting a miniature, a hero from Arena. The contest is being thrown into your game, so you have some overlap there. It's awesome if you want that stuff. And then, of course, all the game trays. So you're getting more than a $20 value for that $20 increase in cost. Additionally, they're offering you a miniatures pledge if you want miniatures, you know, all those fun little miniatures. This is going to be, keep in mind, this is the same company. Sky Kingdom Games is the same company that brought you the Icefaring Guard, which we recently did an unboxing for, and I should have gameplay up on the channel tomorrow. Icefaring Guard, by the way, is one. We'll talk about that one more. But either way, moving on. So yeah, so we have over there, and then additionally we have the all-in bundle. So there's a Kingdom Cost expansion. So if you want $99, we'll give you the base game and the expansion for standees only, which is fine. You don't need miniatures. Or for the $109 gameplay all-in bundle, if you want the Dungeon of Infinity plus the Kingdom Cost expansion for $109, bringing you all the stuff, and then of course the everything all-in bundle if you want the Stonebound Saga Hero Pack from the original campaign, the coin set, the dice set, all the extras over there. So that's basically all of that. But basically the primary idea is and yes, I'm aware I've used the word basically like 7 times this particular segment. But either way, this is one that's basically a dungeon crawler game in which you're going to be leveling up your stats, carrying different items, attacking different enemies. It has a few things that are interesting and different. For instance, the enemies never really are in a spot on the board in a typical sense. You're going to be drawing these enemy cards and attacking like rows of enemies that have to deal with you as you try to take them out. And then you can have different allies come along and help you out and backstab them and deal with all these things. The characters and the differences between the characters and their custom decks and the custom skills they have. And of course the way you level them up, equip different gears, all that stuff is going to be where this game shines. And just the fact that you can dive in 20 minutes and basically, not 20 minutes, you could dive in, so get it all set up and ready to go in like 10-15 minutes, and then boom, just dive into a 45-minute dungeon and have some fun. And alternatively, dive into a 3-hour dungeon. You pick, you choose, figure out, or go through the campaign if you want to really try to experience and level and grow all your characters and see it that way. So lots of different ways you can play this game, and it's rated really well, by the way. The rating on the game is, what was it, an 8.3 I think it was? It's really, really, really high. It's an 8.3, which is basically a high score. I was trying too hard there. But either way, should you get this game, should you not? So, a short version is the original Dungeons of Infinity, that $50 game. For the most part, it did hold its value. For the most part, people were able to sell their original copy of the game for the $50 that they paid for. So, this one is more expensive, but it's giving you more at the same time. I would say this one probably falls into the range. Oh, and important clarification, it's not going to be in retail. It's going to be available on their own website at the MSRP. That $79 game is going to have an MSRP, I believe, of $99. Go ahead and take a look. The MSRP is going to be $79 for the base game and $99 for the deluxe edition. So basically adding like $10 it looks like, because this was $69. So once you factor in shipping, it's not much of a discount. But if it's only available on their website, and if it's only available for the MSRP, then this will be the best chance you have to get it. Of course, always factoring that whole in-between print run conversation as well. And keep in mind, Icefaring Guard in particular, Icefaring Guard is a great example of a game where the Kickstarter cost of Icefaring Guard, if I recall correctly, was $79, and they are basically, making that, I think, like $120, $130. They're making it much more expensive once it's done with the Pledge Manager. Speaking of which, if you want to back the Icefaring Guard at the $79 price point, you still can, but for a limited time. That price point will be going up. So again, the idea that these might get more expensive later, completely possible. But overall, I would say this is one that it's likely to fall in the range of holding its value and or losing a drop, but not much. The original one, people were not selling their $50 game for $75, but they were getting their $50 back when they went ahead and sold it. Moving on to Agemonia. A game that I really like and is really expensive. Really expensive. So first of all, for anyone who wanted a Play This Not That, an Agemonia versus Iridia, because I had a bunch of people asking me for a comparison between the two because I've played and reviewed both these games. So if anyone looking for that context, review is a strong word, first impressions, because I mean, I dived into these games for multiple hours each at the same time. They're very much games that they have evolving narrative and things continuing to grow, and so I definitely have not gotten to the point where I was able to see or experience either of these games. And to that point, that's why I did not do a Play This Not That between the two games, because I don't mind giving you my first impression score, but comparing them when I'm still in the early phases is hard to do, especially as they are both still growing for me. So I don't know when they stop growing, I don't know where they cap out, and where I say this is where the game is. As of right now, Iridia is a game I rated a 5 out of 5. Agemonia is a game that I rated a 4 out of 5. I believe it will only grow. Meaning whether it goes to a 5 out of 5, I don't know. I do not believe it's going lower. Both these games are really solid. But if you wanted to Play This Not That, I did a kind of short, abstracted one on my week in review. The video went up on my channel this past Saturday. You can check that out. So if you want a kind of comparison as to my general thoughts between the two, by all means check that out. Or you can just watch my playthrough tutorial and or review of this game. But all that said, where are we with the game? The game itself is going to be, it's going to be an RPG exploration game as you level up your character, make different narrative choices, and choose what to encounter with on the board. You can have these maps where you have different interaction points left, right, and center. And the way you choose to interact, what you choose to explore, what you choose to seek out, will all have different impacts on, well, your game. As far as the price point of the game, we have the €99 base pledge, which is going to give you miniatures for the heroes and standees for everything else. That's going to be your base option for the game. Then we have €149, which is going to give you the miniatures box, giving you a chunk full of miniatures for all the stuff. Let's see if we can see just how much stuff you get for that. We have all the monster minis over here. So the miniatures pack includes 84 minion minis and 5 boss minis, and that's before any stretch goals or anything else is being revealed, which they still are being revealed. And then we have €200 for the all-in for the game. Although that all-in does not include Sundrop. They are licensing Sundrop from Awakened Realms, and they're going to be using Sundrop. I believe it was a €10 add-on for the base game, and a €50 add-on for everything else. Let me see if I can find that over there. We have over here, we have Sundrop. Here we go. Yeah, €10 for the base game, €50 for everything else. And you're like, well, that's really, 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 really expensive. Yes, Sundrop is really, really, really expensive. So cue all the people who are like, well, with $10 and, 20 minutes of time, you could Zenithal Prime all your own stuff. You could, absolutely. As someone who has done that myself, who is not a pro painter, but who knows the basics, I will say I generally prefer paying for Sundrop than trying to do my own. It takes a lot of time, not a small amount of time. It does not take 20 minutes in my opinion, not unless you're maybe an expert or whatever it is. I think shading and dealing with 100 miniatures or so is probably in the range of between the coats, between the getting it all right and between hoping you do it right and not messing up. I think you're probably looking at somewhere in the range of an hour and a half to 2 hours of time and the $5-10 of equipment, and you still have to hope you're doing it right. So that's a balance. It's always a balance of what you prefer to do. For myself, I tend to prefer to pay for it and get that consistency than risk it myself. But if you want to try it, you have extra miniatures you want to experiment on, by all means, it is a worthwhile experiment that can save you money. There's no question there. If you can get used to doing Sundrop shading yourself, it can absolutely save you money. Overall, what's exclusive on this campaign? Well, Sundrop. Sundrop is the only thing that they have said is exclusive so far, and it does seem like they will be going to retail, which means the question here of should you back it, should you not, will it hold its value, all of that. And despite how much I like the game, if it does make its way to retail, and if Sundrop is the only exclusive thing, then that is a hefty price point to be asking for the game. That is a hefty price point to be hoping that it holds its value, that you can't just get it cheaper down the road. Overall, I think that Agemonia is one that, if you want everything, if you want the Sundrop, if you want the metal coins, if you want all the extras that are typically harder to find at retail, if at all, then yeah, I would definitely go for the Kickstarter. Oh, apparently they had a limited of, that's interesting, they had a €69 miniatures box, which I knew. What I didn't realize is they only have 10 backers for this. I don't know what they did with this. Why did they take this off? Was it because nobody was buying it? I'm so confused. Either way, but going back to what I was saying, if you want everything for this game, if you want the Sundrop, if you want the coins, if you want all the stuff that's harder, then by all means I think Kickstarter is the best choice. If you are someone who does not want all that, if you just want the base game, if you want the base game and the miniatures, then it is a bit of one of those coin toss situations. Right now we have how many backers? We have 1,240 backers. For a game this expensive, for a game that is this much of a heft to it, that does not guarantee a wide retail availability. Absolutely, it does not. It's a good game. I hope it does pick up more, but At the same time, it does not guarantee a wide retail availability when you have something this hefty on Kickstarter. 1,000 pledges could be something for something small, but the bigger the box, the more people have to look at, do I allocate shelf space to it? Do I get it into my warehouse so I can ship it out? How much is it going to see, whatever. So this very much falls into that FOMO category of, if you want to guarantee it, Kickstarter is your best option. Because your other options are waiting for retail, hoping the pricing remains good, or alternatively the secondhand market. So I would say, again, the earlier pledge levels I am not confident on the value of. Like I said already, everything's getting more expensive. The higher pledge levels, if you want it all, is where I'd recommend getting it on Kickstarter. Otherwise, you have to decide how much you want this game and how much you care about the FOMO in one direction or the other. Moving on to 11. Speaking of more expensive games, I said already, this is not going to be a cheap week. We have 11. 11 is going to be 199,000 euros raised, 2,000 backers so far. This is from Portal Games, and if you're wondering what the all-in is on this non-miniature soccer management game, it's 128 euro is the gameplay all-in. And if you're like, how is this 128 euro game? Well, you're not alone. You're not alone at all. The closest comparison I can think of in terms of thinking of a game I would compare this against is going to be Domination's The Road to Civilization. Domination's Road to Civilization from Holy Grail Games? Maybe? I can't remember. I might be blanking on the company. But either way, from that company is another game which had a big box and then tons of modular expansions, all of which led to a very hefty price point and still wasn't really miniatures or anything else like that. 11 is going to fall in the same category. For that all-in pledge, you're basically getting all of this. You're getting, well, the base game, and then that's this, and then 5 separate expansions that are all costing you money otherwise. So you're getting a chunk of content for that. The base pledge, on the other hand, is 60 euro, and if you're like, 60 euro for the base pledge, I thought you were about to tell me, no, the 60 euro, the base pledge is expensive. Now, the good news is, like Robinson Crusoe, they're taking the stance of giving you twice as much of stuff in the stretch goals, although the bad news is, unlike Robinson Crusoe, this isn't a tried and true property that has been in the top 100 for the past 10 years, and you have a lot more people jumping in on. Speaking of which, we should probably give you a bit of background information about the game in case you didn't know about it already, which is 11 is going to be a soccer team management game. You're not actually having matches per se, you're managing a team. You're going to have a bunch of directors you're recruiting, and then trying to recruit different members of your team, of your league, and managing all that as you go through different leagues. Tons of different stuff going on. This is going to be a re-implementation of a game called The Club from the original designer that was very hard to get your hands on and went out of print pretty quickly and is expensive, and this is bringing you a bigger, just much more robust version of that game. And then over here we have the stretch goals that are being unlocked so far. We have the Stadium Dice Tray, we have the Market Mini Expansion, the double layer player board. These are nice things. Do they double the value? You have to decide. The Geek Sponsors Mini Expansion, ooh, look at that, Geek Sponsors. We have Portal Games, we have the wooden screen printed jersey markers, the new staff members. Overall, if this is like Robinson, this may well show more and more stuff that make you say it is worth it. I remember Robinson was a game that initially day one I was very skeptical, and as the campaign developed and went on, more and more Robinson was a game that I felt was worth that additional cost that they were asking for. This may fall down the same pathway, but again, the lack of a prior game that had the degree of notoriety that Robinson had does make that slightly harder. As far as the expansions, they're all going to be 20 euro expansions, cheaper if you get the all-in price, giving you a variety of different things from more players, international travel, international cup expansion, the stadium expansion, more ways to augment and build out and develop your stadium, which you can already do in the base game, but this is going to be more of that. The unexpected events expansion, like the price point on this game. Sorry, Portal, that was too easy. The solo campaign expansion, and I believe the entire campaign is already soloable. I believe the entire game is soloable. This just gives you more solo content for the game. And the unique setup deck, which I do not believe is part of the all-in pledge, but is a free add-on for anyone who followed that campaign. So if you follow this campaign already, then you can go ahead and back, and you'll be getting that free add-on, the unique setup deck. Although I do genuinely hate it. Hate's a strong word. I genuinely am not a fan of when people say gameplay all in, and there's anything that is an exclusion. Anything. In my opinion, if you write the word gameplay all in, anything related to gameplay should be part of that. Otherwise, we fall into the whole Inigo Montoya memes of, you keep saying that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. Is that how it goes? Am I messing up the Inigo Montoya memes? Either way, point is, gameplay all in my opinion, should always be gameplay all in. Otherwise, people might, shockingly enough, believe you and not look for the other things that they're missing. So, and you can manage this. You can have things like, oh, you get a €5 discount if you are following this campaign. You could still have that management of that stuff in the background. I really think gameplay all in should mean gameplay all in. That's going to be all of that. As far as will it hold the value, well, it's not. It might. This game is well rated and it's well sought out after. And there's going to be a lot of GameFound exclusive stuff, a lot of extras in the stretch goals, a lot of things that are going to be available for this game that are not going to be widely available, well, otherwise. They're GameFound exclusive. They're going to be things that aren't in the base copy of the game. And if the game is well liked, if the game is loved like Robinson was, then that price point of €60 for the game may well be worth it. Now, the expansions, on the other hand, is a bit of a different conversation, because if we go to the add-ons over here, you can see that €100 worth of expansions is costing you, what is it, an extra, we're paying an extra €68 for €100 worth of expansions. So offhand, I'd recommend to almost anyone, I'd have a hard time saying get one of these expansions on their own. I think if you want one of the expansions on their own, wait until retail, they'll be cheaper there. If you want the all-in, it's tempting. €68 versus €100, that's tempting. That falls in the range of might well be worth it. And if you want the base game, if you're interested enough, it might still be worth it if this game is well liked and the original game was well liked. If you like the genre, then this is something that the price point was a shock to me, but the extras you get may well be worth it. I think this one likely will hold its value, as much as I'm always hesitant to say it when you have a €60 price point plus shipping on a Euro game that doesn't have all the extras I come to think of with that price point. So yeah, I'm a drop skeptical. We still have, how many days left? We still have 15 days left of daily add-ons and stretch goals that develop the content. If this continues like Robinson, I think this will still be a safe pledge, even as it feels wrong to say so. Moving on, we have the Artemis Odyssey, a 1 to 5 player standalone sequel to the Artemis project. And standalone sequel meaning it's not the same game. It's actually a reprint of Ad Astra, if you want to check that one up on Board Game Geek. But the Artemis Odyssey is going to be giving you from Bruno Fedudi and Sergei Leggett. And it's going to be a game, I have a review on my channel, but it's going to be a game where you're basically exploring the galaxy and trying to get as many points as possible faster than your opponent gets points. You want to get to 77 points and trigger endgame. Along the way, you have simultaneous action planning, where you're basically playing down different cards to the card row, and then flipping the cards, and everyone takes actions associated with those cards. You have a bit more control and or benefit of those actions by playing the cards, so it's a bit of that race for the galaxy mechanism, although different in the way it's implemented. Along the way, you're crafting different, colonies and spaceships and terraformers and all these things that will give you points and or build up your engine in the game. That's overall the game. This is going to be from Grand Gamers Guild, who brought you the Artemis Project, they brought you Endangered, brought you a whole bunch of things. They brought you, they brought you Endeavor, along with Burnt Island Games. But overall, that's going to be all of that. Price point on this game is going to be $65. That's going to be the same as the original Galileo edition of the Artemis Project, which was back then. Speaking of which, you can spend $130 and get that original edition of the game as well. So if you want that original copy over there, you can get that as well. As far as will it hold its value or that, so first of all, there are extras over here. So if you're comparing it to retail, there are extras, there's going to be game trays, there's going to be deluxeified components, there's going to be upgraded miniatures and all that instead of what you would otherwise see in retail. This is the in-the-box retail edition versus deluxe. So you can see all those extras. If you've watched my videos before, if you've watched my 2 back or not to max before, you know what a fan I am of game trays, of anything that makes the setup and tear down of a game that much more accessible, and this is very much doing all of that. You can see the individual faction trays, the board, all that different stuff going on over there. And by the way, we have 7 people backing the retail edition of this game for $55. The 7 of you, unless you really like those wood components, and even if you do, the 7 of you, whoever you are, if you're watching this video, you should either be upgrading an extra $10 to get all the fancy extras, or canceling your pledge and getting it at retail, where the retail edition of this game will be cheaper than $55, even with the price increases. So don't get that particular version. Past that, as far as the $65 version, again, we cover the differences between retail and Kickstarter. You are getting a bunch of extras there. As far as the will it hold its value or not, I think the strongest comparison is going to be the Artemis Project. The combination of it's a reprint of an existing game, a decently rated existing game, and to combine that with the reprinting of the Artemis Project, I would say it falls in the category of expect to lose $10 or so. It is one where people wanted it, and if you sell it right away as soon as it lands, people are hyped, people are willing to pay that price point. As time goes on, it does lose a little bit, and again, if you look at the sales of the Artemis Project on the secondhand market, even though the Galileo edition of the game still sells for less than what it originally cost. Not a lot less, but you will take a small hit there. That is going to be the Artemis Project. Which brings us to EOS Island of Angels from King Raccoon Games, published by Grey Fox as well. And yes, before we get into it, I am fully aware that Grey Fox Games has a bit of a track record of issues or parts or whatever it is in their games. Now, I said this recently in another video, I'll say it again here. In general, my overall understanding of Grey Fox Games is that most people get what they backed. Most people get what they paid for. They do have a slightly higher degree of issues than, let's say, publisher X, Y, or Z. So they do have I would say, in my opinion, they have more complaints than other people, but they're not in any way someone who I'm worried about backing. It's just my 2 cents there. Again, the way I put it last time is I deal with my board game code, the retail operation I run deals with used games. We have complaints, we have issues. Most of our customers are happy, but yes, we do have more complaints or issues than Miniature Market or whatever it is. But either way, going back to EOS Island of Angels. So now that we've got that, buyer beware, backer beware, all of that. But Grey Fox Games, or EOS Island of Angels from King Raccoon Games, they brought you Tsukanami New Dawn, or whatever it was, and they're now bringing you EOS Island of Angels, which is their first game outside that series, and again, partnering with Grey Fox like they did with that one as well. This is going to be a totally different game. There are some miniatures in this game, but not really a lot. This is not a miniature game. This is going to be a tableau building game in which you have all these different factions. You're going to have 6 in the base game plus 2 more in the expansion, which are a ton of different ways to play the game, because you're not going to be playing a 6-player game. You could play a 5-player game, but you don't want to play a 5-player game, in my opinion. This is a game where you want to play, in my opinion, at 3 or 4 players is where it's going to shine. And even at 2 players is doable, by the way, but at 3 or 4 is where it's shine. I think 3 is my personal sweet spot from having played the game. I have a review on my channel. I gave this one a 4 to 5. I really enjoyed it, specifically because of the powers and abilities in this game. You're going to have all these different factions, and you're taking different actions. You're constantly leveling up your people. You're constantly developing more cards, more powers. You're getting angels. You're conquering demons. You're doing all these things that are constantly adding to the fun stuff you can do in this game. And I'm all about the fun stuff in games. That's why I play games. I like the fun stuff. I like the challenge of like, okay, how can I combine and, you know, build up this faction in that way? And then you always pair up a faction with a different ship. So you have this mismatch of, well, this ship can be upgraded in that way. This faction can be upgraded in that way. The combination of the two is going to give you a ton of different ways to develop and play out this game, that you will not be playing this game more than the opportunities you have to play a different version of the game. Unless you play this game like 35 times, which would be a whole lot of your life. 35 is not the right number. It's like, what is it, 8 times 6? Is that what the number would be? 48 maybe? I don't even know exactly how many ships and factions they have. A lot is the point. Either way, that is going to be the game overall. We have the base game, and this, by the way, on Kickstarter is all going to be the deluxe version of the game. The game will go to retail, supposedly, but this is all the deluxe version of the game. Anywhere you see the word deluxe or you see an increased number is where you have stretch goals or extras augmenting the game. You have upgraded pieces, and they'll show you the breakdown soon enough. We'll go through all of that. We have the die. All these things are these extras you're getting over here. We have 5 asymmetric factions. Did I say 6 in the base game? I may have said 6 in the base game. 5 in the base game. I thought it was 6 in the base game. Either way, we have exclusive. We have individual new game pieces. They're going to be, retail version will have a simple ship. So again, we're going to go through all these. Look at the color, the art, all these things are gorgeous in the game. We have the Quan, we have all this. And we have the EOS Island of Angels expansion, which is giving you 2 new nations. So I guess only total 7 nations? I totally thought it was 6 plus 2. I may have missed that. Either way, that's going to be the game. It's all power building, engine building, exploration, tons of fun as you try to figure out how to earn the most chronicles and ultimately win the game with the most points. The breakdowns on deluxe versus non-deluxe are going to be over here, where you can see the retail version of the game is going to show up, well, with these, and the deluxe version of the game is going to show up with these. Now, one fun thing that I don't know is sometimes you get both when you get a deluxe version of the game. I don't know if you get both this time or if it's upgraded, but you get all these, and granted, the angels absolutely look like trees. I don't know if it's been pointed out in the comments yet, but anyone who hasn't pointed this out, these don't look like angels, these look like trees. I'll work with it, but every other deluxe piece I think is great, but now I'm stuck with trees instead of angels. Not the worst, just without the art, you kind of lose that feeling a bit. I can mentally reimagine, it's all good. But either way, and then we have recess player boards, which I'm always a huge fan of. All of this stuff in the game is giving you the deluxe version of the game, and still stretch goals to be unlocked, all of that. They have funded, I believe, I'm pretty sure, yeah, they funded. They have not gotten through a ton of stretch goals, 796 backers so far. Let's talk about should you back it, should you not, all of that. So, the price point of the game is going to be €49, $58 for the base game, and then the expansion is bringing you to 76, plus, of course, shipping. Again, same question, conversation about the higher price point. The retail version of the game will be cheaper, obviously, but it will be less of the same game. So it's not going to be the same game, not the same comparison. You're probably paying, once you factor in shipping, you're probably paying around $15, $20 extra for that increase to your game components. Do you care about that enough? That's a you question. Do you care about the pieces, the recess player boards, the extra tokens, all that stuff? That's a you question, absolutely, for sure. As far as will it hold its value in the secondhand market, if it's not a game for you, Overall, I am skeptical that this will. I think it's going to fall in the same place as the Artemis project. It's going to be a game, in my opinion, where, like, it's interesting. I give this a 4 to 5. I really enjoy the powers and abilities and the leveling up. Based on the Kickstarter, 800 backers is not a small number. They're doing totally fine, but it's also not seeing a ton of build up and pull in. And unless that happens in the secondhand market, unless this falls in the category of the secondhand market being like, wow, this people love the game and the reviews start pouring in and people are like, you have to try that game, then this likely will fall in the same realm as the Artemis Odyssey, the Artemis project. Games that are good but don't see that wide adoption that everyone's raving about and trying to get their hands on, in which case it'll probably fall in the same category of a game where you probably lose $5-10 on what you paid for it. So you might take a small loss. It's up to you whether you want to wait for retail, not get it at all, get it on the Kickstarter, all of that. Moving on to Limbo Eternal War 1.5, and I will not be heavily going into this one because they have a million different pledge levels. They have a ton of different ways to augment or build out. This is going to be Limbo Eternal 1.5. Limbo Eternal War 1.5. They recently relaunched this as a Kickstarter. They had to cancel it. They didn't have to. They chose to cancel and come back with more, and I'm glad they did because the art's much better, the miniatures are much better, the pictures, everything they're doing. They did a much better job with this relaunch, so good for them there. I mean, look at some of these miniatures. They look absolutely insane, and this is going to be a game that is highly rated on Board Game Geek, but has a small audience, a small following, which, as I said last time when they had the campaign running, puts it into that category that's a little frustrating of it may hold its value, but it may not. It depends on if you find someone who's willing to buy up your copy of the game, because, I mean, there's a lot going on here. It's a game where your options are Kickstarter or, well, secondhand market generally, and so that doesn't give you a lot of options. It puts it in the category of it may hold its value, but you have to find someone who actually wants it, which is a smaller audience, because despite the fact that we have 1,100 backers over here, if you look on Board Game Geek, the actual audience for the game there is very, very small. You have a handful of people trading it, a handful of people have purchased it or sold it in the past, so not a lot of back and forth volume going on there. I would say if you want it, then sadly your best chance is, well, the Kickstarter. Sadly is probably the wrong word. If you want it, your best guarantee of getting the game is going to be the Kickstarter. You have to choose the pledge level you want for you. Are you jumping in for the first time? Are you trying to get everything? As far as it will hold its value, again, I just said, it kind of depends on whether you find someone who's willing to buy your collection off you in terms of this miniature skirmish game with over-the-top, gigantic, enormous, very cool-looking miniatures for Limbo Eternal War. Moving on, we have Solforge, which is basically Keyforge, but it's not Keyforge, it's Solforge, which is a totally different name. The good news is it's nothing like Keyforge, so you won't be confused. See, unlike Keyforge, this is going to be a procedurally generated card game where a computer, an algorithm, is going to generate the... That is Keyforge. Wait. Solforge. No, so unlike Keyforge, this is a game where no two decks you ever buy will be the same. Is this Keyforge? Am I on the right page? Okay, so all joking aside, this is Solforge from Richard Garfield, which that's a good point, because Richard Garfield designed Solforge, but he did... Okay. Well, so Keyforge, for those who don't know, did just announce that they're going on a temporary hiatus. So Keyforge, published by Fantasy Flight Games and designed by Richard Garfield, with games no two decks ever being the same and being totally different and all that, they just went on a hiatus where they said, hey, our algorithm's broken, and so we're gonna hold off for like 2 years or something while we fix stuff, and then we'll come back to you. Don't worry, everything you bought in the meantime, still totally usable. Which is great, I guess. But overall, Solforge is stepping in to take its seat, so to speak, take its place in the arena, I don't know. But either way, from Stoneblade Entertainment, who brought you Ascension, Solforge is going to have one notable difference that I can find between the two games. Obviously, there's slight gameplay differences, the way they actually play, but Solforge and Keyforge are both games where you buy unique decks that are algorithmically generated, where they're both designed by Richard Garfield. They can both be used in tournaments. You can register your decks, all that stuff. The main differences are going to be, well, gameplay differences, and then the fact that in Solforge, you combine basically two decks. You basically combine together two factions, and then you start playing it out, and then you basically level up your characters as you go through it. There's a procedural aspect that you're kind of building your characters as you go, putting one into the discard pile, replacing it, proxying it out, and your characters are growing as you go through it. You can see like an example of the art over here as how your character slowly develops and levels up in this game. But past that, lots of similarities, lots of differences. As far as holding its value or whatnot, this one is always a tough one because it falls into that more collectible card game genre, which means I'm going to compare it to Keyforge here, because I have been already. I'm going to compare it to Keyforge over here, where you can jump into this game for $40 for the starter tier, $65 for the bundle tier, get all of that, or the retailer tier and get whatever you want. But that's, hey, you can go ahead and get this game. As far as price points, Keyforge is a game that I can't speak for other arenas outside board games. It was like Keyforge is a game that did not hold its value in the board game market. If you were someone who bought Keyforge decks, you generally didn't get your money back on those decks. They fall into this weird trading card but board game adjacent category where it's like, hey, I bought these 14 decks and I'm selling them. People are like, oh, I guess your decks aren't very good. It's like a weird tangent because you're buying these unique decks that are algorithmically generated, and some decks are better than others, and they have this whole point system of how to manage it. I don't know where Solforge lies. I imagine that it will be similar to Keyforge. I imagine there'll be an audience for this game, a large enough audience that you can play this game, engage in this game. I mean, the campaign's doing $200,000, $158,000, 1,200 backers, doing solidly for them. I think it's a great start to this, and they have 18 days to go. As far as the general wider audience, as far as whether you can just turn around and sell these in the second-hand market if they're not for you, I think you will lose your money over there. Moving on to Relics of Rajavahara and Montallo's Revenge expansion. A game where I passed on the first one. I'm having second thoughts and may well back this one, even though it's more expensive now, because that's the price you pay for waiting. But Relics of Rajavahara, designed by Joe Slack, is going to be a puzzle game that I was pulled in the first time I watched this, and this is just more content for the same game. It's not like they're doing anything special or magical here to make me pulled in, other than just printing more content for a puzzly style game, and I like puzzly style games. This is going to be a solo game similar to any app you've ever had on your phone where you're trying to manage, I'm going to tilt this cube there and move this person here and then reroute that there and step up here and do that, and boom, I won. It's a little puzzle, but it comes with these little puzzles, and then you have the Montallo's Revenge expansion giving you more mechanics and more puzzles as you go through this. This is one where the base game is going to cost you, where are we? $49, this is all Canadian, so $49 for the base game, and it was cheaper in the original campaign. And then as well as that, you get the get Montallo's Revenge for $26, or the all-in for $69 for what is basically a solo puzzle game. A solo puzzle game that, granted, you can turn around and sell to the next person, you can gift it to a friend, or you can just wait long enough and play it again, and you'll probably forget everything. Overall, as far as will it hold its value, will it's not, it's hard to say. I have to stick with what I said the first time around, which, first of all, this one has very limited retail availability. So your options so far are Kickstarter or the secondhand market. As far as will it hold its value, the first one just landed, and I haven't had a chance to see whether it'll hold its value in the secondhand market because people aren't selling it yet, which is a good sign. Generally, the fact that people have gotten the game and we're not seeing at least 4 or 5 copies up for sale is a good sign as far as people enjoying the game. It currently has a 7.7 on Board Game Geek, which is solid. So overall, I may well jump into this Kickstarter because I was tempted last time. I was trying to have self-control. My self-control may have expired. We'll see. We'll figure it out. But overall, as far as will it hold its value or not, I'm still on the fence. It's one of those games where the price point for what you're getting is decent, but not amazing. It's expensive. Like I said already, prices are going up across the board. As far as people selling it on the second-hand market, well, as long as that's not happening, you don't really have much in the way of options. So it might hold its value. You might be able to ask for more. I think it's going to fall more in the category of someone will sell it, and you'll be able to get it for $10, $15 cheaper than the Kickstarter, which means you'll have lost money as the person who bought it, but it's likely having an infrequent rate of exchange on the market, similar to Limbo Eternal War, even if it's an entirely different category. But Relics of Rajavahara, a well-rated, solo, puzzly game on Kickstarter. And then moving on, lastly and finally, to Solarsphere, Harness the Power of the Stars. This is going to be by Duranta Games, and this is their, I believe, their second game. They had Solar Storm was their first game. They have Solarsphere now. This is a game it's a dice placement, jury-heavy game. This is a solid little game in terms of, it's one of those systems that it looks like a light dice placement game like Kingsburg. Oh, roll some dice, assign them, all of that. It is not light. This is a tight, mean engine. I don't know if it's mean. It's a tight engine where you're going to roll dice, start gathering different resources, putting different people on, putting different, satellites on the board to try to improve your actions, using your drones to manipulate your dice or to be able to go where other players have gone, and then across 6 rounds, getting better and better and better at what you do. Across 6 rounds, gathering crew, developing combos, and finding ways to really develop a meaty engine that allows you to do so much in this game. This is a tighter game than it looks at first glance. It is a heavier game than it looks at first glance. But overall, that's going to be the main game. Again, you're basically rolling dice, assigning to actions, recruiting crew, building things in this solar sphere, because that's ultimately the main goal, collecting different set symbols, trying to manipulate the use of your gears. I can't remember the name of it, but there's an element in the game where you can basically slowly lower your gears, which is lowering points too, but it gives you additional bonuses, so it's a trade-off of can you get enough bonuses out of it that it's worth the trade-off in points, as opposed to just trying to escalate on your points. Lots of things to manage and balance in this game, and different pathways to victories. There are different ways, different levers you can push in terms of which channel you try to go down. Do you try to go more heavily on crew, more heavily on just getting onto the board, more heavily on just trying to level up your gear to the max and just cycle points and never cash them in. There's a ton of ways you can try to get chunks of points in this game. It is a really well, solidly designed engine. As far as the price points for the game, we have $46, which is going to be for the base game plus the Kickstarter pack, and then we have $68 for the base game, the Kickstarter pack, and the expansion. So what is all of that? The base game is going to be, well, over here. The expansion is going to be over here. I have not played with the expansion. I have a review of this game on my channel. I have not played with the expansions at all, so I can't talk about those. But then we do have the Kickstarter pack, which is going to be all this. 5 giant order ships, as well as 5 asymmetric power cards, are going to be some more stuff and more to be unlocked in stretch goals. That's going to be the expansion stuff you get, the Kickstarter exclusive stuff you get in this game. So, where does that leave us? So we basically have $46 for the entry point plus shipping, which is not bad. Considering the price points we've been seeing today, that falls on the cheaper side of things. It does not mean it's the right price point, but it's certainly on the cheaper side of things. This is a game where, again, you may well see that game without the Kickstarter pack. You may see it at retail for the $42 range, somewhere in that range. So you're paying an extra few bucks plus shipping to get the Kickstarter exclusive pack, which is basically the trade-off you get there. And then for the expansions as well, you'll be paying an extra $68 from $46, so you're paying an extra $22 to get the expansion pack as well as the base game. Will it hold its value? Will it not? So compared to retail, again, you're paying a little bit more, but you're getting some stuff you don't get at retail, so it balances out roughly there. Compared to the secondhand market, will it hold its value? Again, same thing as EOS Island of Angels and the Artemis Odyssey, unless this sees wide adoption, which I'm skeptical of, then it falls in the category of a good game that, is forgotten a year and a half later, which means your options secondhand market and people aren't demanding high price points. You'll probably see the same thing. Expect to lose $5 to $10 if you back this now and want to sell it on the secondhand market later. And that basically brings us to everything. And I forgot to put my little picks of the week warning up on the page, but I have not forgotten. So picks of the week. We have 2 picks of the week as usual. One for my personal preference and one for best value. Personal preference is going to fall under the category of Agemonia. Agemonia for me is my favorite from these games I played. EOS is a close second, but Agemonia I think is a cleaner game. EOS, I have a lot of things I like about EOS, but I do find it to be a bit messier of an experience. Agemonia is one where I really enjoy the unfolding of the narrative and the choices you make as you interact with different points and wander around the board, and every single scenario I have played has progressively made me more and more interested in this game. If you look at the updates, I'm just, every time they release a new image of a map, I find myself more pulled into this game. I'm like, ooh, look at this. I want to dive into this scenario. I don't know what happens in it, but I haven't had a chance to explore this stuff. And I remember exploring the other stuff and how much fun it was, so I want to explore that stuff. Oh, look at this. This is an entirely different map. What are we? Are we in a bar, in a mage's tower? I don't know where we are, but I want to walk around. What's going to be with this crate? Should I go to this crate or do I go to this treasure chest? Will I have time for both? I might have time for both. We'll see. I love the choices, and the fact that every time they show me art from the game has me more invested in diving into it even further. If you go back, let's see, update 4 was another one where we update over. Update 4, this one, Barricade Isle. Yeah, if we go to here, this is another map. I want to explore this map. The very fact that every time they show me a new image has me wanting to play the game again is a really solid testimonial for Agemonia. They show me the art, and I'm like, I want to do that. I want to explore that because I know what the game feels like to play, and I want to feel out what you did on this particular storyboard. So that's going to be Agemonia, my pick of the week in terms of my best interest or whatnot. In terms of value pick of the week, I don't have anything that I'm 100% confident of the value this week. Nothing, unfortunately. Generally, there's usually something where I'm like, this is a good back. Everything else falls in the category more of if you want the exclusives, then go ahead and get that. The closest thing I have to a solid back is going to be Dungeons of Infinity, partially because they won't have a retail release. So combine a game that's an 8.3 on Board Game Geek and the backing of Sky Kingdom Games, bringing it back to the spotlight and giving people an option to dive into it again, combined with one-stop co-op shop and rolling solo, playing the game and liking the game. I think this is the best value pick of the week. Again, I'm still not as confident as I generally would like to be like, oh yeah, back this game, you'll 100% get your money back. I don't have that same level of confidence, but from everything else we covered today that wasn't an update, meaning not Mythic Mischief, not Tanares, not Wild Serengeti, but from everything else, I think this is going to be my value pick of the week. And that is basically everything. Until next time, I am Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Fortunately, I didn't have to cough at all during this video, which is a close call. But as always, and until next time, have a good one. Whew. Sorry. First of all, here's my Groot shirt. Gotta say, this is one of my favorite T-Turtle shirts. Again, you'd think that I'd be sponsored by T-Turtle. In fact, it's funny, I heard T-Turtle's going to be at Gen Con, which I'm sadly not going to, and I was like, I want to meet T-Turtle to say, hey, give me free shirts, because I keep showing your shirts online. I've probably spent like $200 on T-Turtle shirts just because I do them on these videos, and I don't wear T-shirts most of my life. I don't bother, but for these videos, I like having different shirts to mix things up, and so I keep buying T-Turtle shirts and justifying it that way. So yeah, the cost of being a content creator. Cameras, board games, T-Turtle shirts, all of that stuff. Anything interesting going on? I don't know. Oh, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that over there. So, fun fact, if you look over there, you can see the giant amount of basically Horizon Zero Dawn boxes on my mantle over there, which is something that I talked about in my week. Well, I didn't talk about in my week in review. I had them on my mantle, and I completely forgot they were on the image behind me, and so I didn't talk about them. So some short context there. I'll talk about it more in the actual video when I do an unboxing. I will be doing an unboxing, but basically, Steamforge Games reached out and said, "Hey, do you want to do a review of the of Horizon Zero Dawn?" And I said, honestly, I love the video game. The miniatures look amazing. I'm not confident it's a good game. Like, I am happy to review it, but like I will be giving my real thoughts on whether I liked it or not. Like, from what I've seen, there actually seem to be a bunch of elements that I do like. Like, if looking into the game, like checking out ratings and what people like, don't like, there seems to be a lot of elements about the game that I would enjoy in Horizon Zero Dawn. But it also seems like it potentially has issues too. Like, both the semi-cooperative and the co-op mode have different potential issues that might make it a problem. So I said, hey, happy to review it. Lots of things that I think I might like. Love the IP, love the miniatures, but I've also heard these and these and these complaints, and if I have those complaints, I will talk about them. So your call. And they're like, yeah, we're all good. We'll send it to you. Do you want like everything or just the base game? And I was like, I like miniatures. So I'll take everything. So basically, they sent me everything. What's the relevance there? They didn't send me the base game. They sent me everything except for the base game. So I've had this sitting here for like 3 weeks now, which I'm not going to unbox it until I have the base game. So I'm waiting for the base game to arrive now, which is coming separately. I'll have to send them another email because I haven't heard back in a while. But as of right now, I have every expansion you can dream of for Horizon Zero Dawn, but I don't have the base game yet. My plan is to unbox it, play it, and then also, and this is where the review might come later, to play with some of the expansions. Because what I've seen on the comments online is that, and this will be noted in the review if that's the case, obviously, but I have seen that some people said the expansions, or some of the expansions, do fix some of the problems with the base game. And if that's the case, then I'm going to note that as well. So I have to see, I'll play it out, I'll be unboxing it, I'll be talking about it because it's pretty, and it's a video game that I loved, and I want to see it, but that's going to be all of that. Anyways, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I've done this already, as always. Oh, and if you're a patron, as always, if you're not a patron or you are a patron, as usual, over on Patreon, I will have my Unfair and Unbalanced review video where I talk about all these campaigns I just talked about and convince you not to back every single one of them, which honestly this week isn't that hard because everything's getting more expensive. Until next time, have a good one.